The recent disasters in Japan has been an eye-opener for very many people. In fact, it is a historical eye-opener on the many issues that mankind faces, and especially our country. One of the problems that came up in the Japanese earthquake and tsunami episode is the Fukushima nuclear power plant crisis, where not only 1, 2, but I think 4 or 5, even 6 nuclear power plants ran into trouble and not only threatened but actually started emitting threatening radiation levels. In our country, this question, of course, has been utmost in our minds. There has been a campaign to set up a nuclear power plant and, in fact, to revive the old Bataan nuclear power plant, which we ourselves in the past had supported. At the same time, over the past 10 years, I've been saying and I've been crusading for geothermal, since we do have unlimited, in sense, resources for geothermal, as well as being already known for the technology. The Philippines is number 2 in geothermal production in the world, second only to the United States. But when the Fukushima reactor crisis came about, my position continued to be geothermal, but study nuclear. Now, lately, we've had many shoot from the hip reactions about nuclear power, and shoot from the hip to shoot it down. We cannot blame them. Certainly, the crisis at the Fukushima power plants are horrific and even more calamitous if these are not controlled. And so the imagination of many people really ran wild, and imagining the fallout revolving all over the world. However, I would not be that quick to shoot nuclear power down. The alternatives of solar and wind are shown to be insufficient to become base loads for mass energy production. And therefore, this evening, we thought that we would invite one of the foremost nuclear scientists in the country. Actually, I remembered him for many reasons, not just because of the nuclear issue that is raging today, but also for sentimental reasons. I really wanted to invite him back to our show. I think the public has missed him for quite some time. One of our foremost physicists, and I think our media discussions are very short of really in-depth and serious technical scientific discussions on many issues. I'm speaking of none other than Dr. Roger Posadas. I don't know what to call him. Is it a nuclear physicist? Well, he is one of the eminent physicists of the Philippines, Wiki Filipina says, and was Chancellor of the University of the Philippines in Diliman from 1993 to 1996. He was a professor of physics at the UP Diliman, and this is a more interesting part. He was ordered, arrested, and jailed by President Ferdinand Marcos during the 70s because of his criticisms about the excesses in government. I wanted to invite him previously on his paper, Leapfrogging the Scientific and Technological Gap, an Alternative National Strategy for Mastering the Future. Well, this is as good time as any to start talking about technology and how the Philippines can leapfrog to a new nuke alternative. But let's go to Dr. Posadas first and ask him what he's doing now. He's still teaching, and last time I brought him home was to a place in Marikina that was hit by Ondoy. So I asked him if he was hit by Ondoy 3 years ago. Anyway, Dr. Posadas, please tell us first about yourself. What's your status today?
Currently, I'm teaching full-time technology management at the Technology Management Center at UP Diliman, teaching topics like R&D management, national innovation systems, intellectual property management, technology acquisition, technology catch-up, etc.
And what was your reaction when you saw the Fukushima crisis unfold?
Well, my first reaction was this would be goodbye to nuclear power in the Philippines. But I'm referring to nuclear power based on the uranium cycle. But there is an alternative to the uranium-fueled reactors. And actually, this is an old technology that was tested and demonstrated in the 1950s, 1960s at Oak Ridge National Laboratory by the team of Dr. Alvin Weinberg. However, Admiral Rickover, the head of the U.S. nuclear fleet, was able to convince the U.S. government that the better option was the use of uranium-235 for nuclear power. And this was first used in the U.S. nuclear submarines. And so when Alvin Weinberg criticized the use of light water reactors, he was dismissed from the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and the project on thorium-fueled nuclear reactors was shut down.
Yes. Let's go into what thorium is. What number is it in the table of elements? But it also has to be radioactive to be able to produce energy through nuclear fission.
Thorium has an atomic number of 90 and atomic weight of 232. It's slightly radioactive.
Only slightly?
Yes.
What's the difference, let's say, uranium and the slightly radioactive thorium? You're talking about magnitude of 100 more radioactive on uranium, 1,000 more,
well, it's
more?
slightly radioactive because its half-life is something like 10,000
10,000 years.
10,000 years.
Okay. What about uranium?
Uranium, the naturally occurring, the abundant isotope is uranium-238. But uranium-238 is not fissile, meaning it's not capable of being split under normal conditions. However, there's an isotope of uranium which is uranium-235, which is fissile. When it's hit by a neutron, it can split and create more neutrons, and so it can produce heat in a chain reaction.
I'm not sure it was wise for me to ask those questions because I got lost in the discussion.
Yes.
But anyway, that's to highlight that we have projected on the screen the uranium fuel cycle versus the thorium fuel cycle, and you can see Doc on the screen. Is there anything you want to explain?
Yes, thorium is not fissile, but it is fertile. Because when a neutron hits a thorium nucleus, thorium is transmuted into protactinium-233. And then in 27 days, protactinium can undergo beta decay 2 times to become uranium-233, which is fissile.
Okay.
And
well, we're going to simplify everything a bit later, but go ahead, go ahead.
So, in other words, thorium can be a source of a fissile isotope of uranium, which is uranium-233.
Okay.
And uranium-233, like uranium-235, can be made to induce chain reaction.
Okay. Well, the point I'm highlighting here is that we have the people who understand it. Of course, we don't. I don't. But we have the people who understand it, like Dr. Posadas. And Dr. Posadas tells me that we have the capability to fabricate the equipment ourselves. This is not as highly volatile as uranium nuclear reaction, and therefore the equipment and the facilities are simpler and more basic, more. Can you elaborate
yes,
on that?
The nice thing about thorium is that it is 3 to 4 times more abundant than uranium. In fact, according to Filipino geologists, it is available in monazite sands, which can be found in Palawan.
What are these sands? What are monazite sands? These are not the beach sand. This is not silica.
These are sources of rare earth.
Okay, rare earth.
And so they're very abundant. And in fact, right now, China and India are racing to develop thorium-fueled nuclear reactors and to become the world leaders in this technology. Now, the nice thing about thorium-fueled nuclear reactors is that it is inherently safe, and it is less costly than uranium-fueled reactors, because you don't have to have all those fancy equipment
and the
needed to keep the reactor safe. And then it can be operated at atmospheric pressure. And in fact, it produces heat which has a thermal efficiency of 45%. And it can be scaled up or scaled down, depending on your need. So you can have a reactor designed for 100 kilowatts, or a reactor designed for 1,000 megawatts.
And what is important, of course, is the concern of the world today about safety. And you say it is inherently safe. These cover the following questions. Number one, no chance of overheating. Number two, the radioactive waste. Is there waste, and how long is it a problem if there is waste?
Well, in the case of the uranium cycle, one problem is how to manage the waste, because the long-lasting radioactive waste can last up to 10,000 years, whereas for this thorium cycle, the radioactive products will be minimal, and after 10 years, the short-lived products can be stabilized, while the long-lasting waste products can be stored safely in 300 years.
And after 300 years, completely no radioactivity anymore.
Yes.
Unlike uranium, which would last for 10,000 years, the dangers. Okay. And so it's much more manageable.
Yes.
Okay. And what about overheating of the reactors?
No problem, because when it overheats, then the reactivity is lowered automatically.
So
as part
thorium by itself has a maximum temperature, and when it reaches that, it
no, we're talking about the uranium-233.
Uranium-230, yes.
Reactions there.
Okay.
And then when there is overheating, then you can design it such that you have a freeze plug, which melts, and then the fuel, the elements.
Yeah, I think what is used here is the liquid fluoride.
Liquefied fluoride.
Liquefied fluoride.
And then
so that drains out.
That drains out safely and solidifies.
Yeah. Later on, in the second half, we'll show more of the graphic presentations to help all of us understand this. And so Dr. Posadas has tried to explain that it is inherently safer than the uranium nuclear reactors. And you stress the fact that it can be, the size can be adjusted to the requirements. It can be small scale, in other words, unlike uranium nuclear power plants are always huge. What about the uranium power plants for the submarines? They're quite small.
Yes, they can be designed to be small also, but when we're talking of
baselines, base
load,
loads, yeah.
In the case of nuclear uranium based power plants, the problem is you have to design this for redundancy in safety systems, and therefore that increases the cost.
Okay.
And then it takes a long time to construct a nuclear power plant based on uranium. Unlike in a thorium fueled nuclear power plant, it's faster to build, and it can be built at 1/2 the cost of uranium based nuclear power plant. In fact, it's the present uranium pressurized water reactors costs about $4 per watt, while you can build a thorium fueled reactor at $2 per watt.
Okay. We'll take a look at some of the comparisons later. I found them very helpful in understanding the comparison. So we'll take a look at that. And we'll be taking our break in a minute. Again, aside from thorium, any other element that can be used? There are reactors here. Well, uranium basically is it, and thorium. Are there other elements that have been studied? So it's basically uranium and thorium.
Right.
Those are the two alternatives.
Yes.
And okay, so we'll take our break at this point, and we'll come back for more clarification from Dr. Roger Posadas. Okay.